Awesome. Okay. Looks like we're live. Great. And let me just mute inside of YouTube so that we aren't getting reverb there. Okay, great. Welcome, everyone. Great to have you here. All right, so we'll just give it a second as more people will join.
Sure.
Momentarily. I'll just keep my eyes here to get a sense of as people join. If you're just joining, welcome, welcome, welcome. I see a few people are here. If you'd be willing to hit that like button, that would be fantastic. So exciting. Hey, Amanda A., welcome. Great to have you here. Awesome. Hey, Allison. Awesome to have you here. Thanks for joining. We'll just give this a couple more minutes. How was you guys this full moon in Libra? Was it intense? Did you guys have a fun ride? It's definitely a moody moon for sure. Hey, Ranja. Hi, Sandy. It has been forever. It's great to see you, hon. Christina, great to have you here. Thanks for joining. Hey, how's it hanging in Austin? I see your unofficial governor, Sean McConaughey, or what's his name? Is that his name? Matthew McConaughey is out here doing big things. Matthew McConaughey is doing big things in Austin. Very fun. Yeah, it was really intense. And yeah, some intensity for sure, but it didn't last long. That's it. Yeah, it didn't last, which was nice. That was a nice thing about it, that it didn't last. MBZ Daddy, welcome. H. Hines, welcome. Hey, Healing Our World. Greta, yeah. Moody Moon, yeah. Dana, welcome. It's so nice to see you. It's been forever since I've seen you too. All right, beloveds, let's go ahead and dig in. If you're new to the channel, welcome. I love welcoming new subscribers. We've got some fantastic content for you tonight. This channel is both a mix of twin flame, twin soul astrology, as well as Western astrology for the Ascending Collective. And my name is Kay Moon, and I'm your host this evening, and I am joined by a special guest today. Her name is Candace Marie of Beyond the Veil Tarot and Astrology, and I'll be linking both her website and YouTube in just a moment in the comments. I've known Candace for several years, and when I, as an astrologer, need a reading and need to talk to someone about what's going on in my chart, Candace is who I trust and who I go to. She's been working digitally on YouTube long before my channel even got started, online and offline. And not only does she do astrology, but she also does tarot, and she runs an online herbal apothecary. And she works in mediumship and past life as well. And additionally, she works in cartomancy. So literally, if you have any question, Candace can probably answer it. But the thing that I like and respect most about her work, and she talked about this a bit in her full moon in Libra video, is that, she really will give you an honest, objective, third party opinion and read on what's going on in your circumstance. And she'll bridge the gap between your blind spots and your person if you've got someone special in your life that you'd like to have a read on, in addition to your future and your past, so that you can really see things holistically. She's both clairvoyant and intuitive, and she practices accessing the Akashic records through her readings as well. And her sessions are not for the faint of heart. They are accurate. They are accurate. If you want accuracy, you will talk to Candace. She is who I talk to as well. So, welcome, Candace. It's great to have you here. I know there's much more to be said about you, but you guys can all find that over on her website, which I'm going to link in the comments for you now. And Candace has joined us tonight to talk specifically about the rest of 2020, what we can expect, what the energy is going to be like before the pandemic hit. So this was back in November of 2019. I had Candace join me for a preview of 2020 because there were some big energies coming. And in that video, I linked it for you guys in the community section. Candace talked about, possible pandemics and outbreaks. And she also talked about vaccines arriving. She talked about economic slowdown. Like she literally nailed how the year was going to unfold before we set foot in 2020. So I invited her back. I'm super pumped to see what she has to say about 2021. Thanks for being here, Candace.
Thank you. That was quite an introduction. I'm happy to be back, and it's always great to be able to share space with like-minded ASTRO friends. So I appreciate the invitation.
My pleasure. All right. Well, I will give you the floor. Where would you like to begin?
Well, it's interesting because we were chatting a little bit about how we wanted to kind of direct I guess the session that we're having today. So it's kind of hard to talk about what's going on right now without discussing the conjunction that we had back in December. So I'm going to kind of talk a little bit briefly on what happened back in December, so that way we can kind of figure out how we got to where we are now. So what I'm referencing specifically was when Saturn moved back into Aquarius after it went in and out of those degrees all last year, and then came into the exact conjunction that it made with Jupiter in Aquarius. So that was happening like right around the 20th, the 21st of December of 2020. And it's not abnormal or too abnormal, I think, for Saturn and Jupiter to move together, right? We saw this a little bit last year when Saturn met up with Jupiter and Capricorn, and that's where we really saw intermittently all year, even with Pluto, this kind of like government crackdown. That's what I'm calling it, because with Saturn, which restricts, and Pluto, which transforms or sometimes abuses power, and then Jupiter magnifies. Last year, we certainly saw lots of shutdowns and government control and implementation of borders and all kinds of things. But in Aquarius, it's very unique. I think we only see the Saturn-Jupiter conjunctions really every 20 years or so, right? Other than the one that we just had in Capricorn, the last one that we had was the one that took place, I believe, in the 80s when it was in Libra. But the reason why this one is so different is 0 degrees is always very, very, very fertile. I connect that energy to Pluto. I connect that energy to like a seed or like a very new beginning. And when you're dealing with 0 degrees of any sign, it's very prominent because it's basically ushering in a complete new energy. So I've heard a lot of people talk about, the age of Aquarius and, are we already in it, or are we coming into it, or when are we going to start it? Everybody has their own perspective. I'm not going to, I think, say it's going to start at any one particular time. But I do think it's safe to say that because of this conjunction that took place at the end of December, it was just that energetic shift that's like, okay, there's no going back. Like, this is the new normal. And zeros give us an opportunity, especially at a fixed sign, to really hold space for a complete new beginning. And really in Aquarius, it's about our future visions. So it's kind of contradicting when we think of Aquarius being very social and then Saturn showing up and like not allowing us to expand. And then Jupiter shows up and then says, no, we want to go everywhere. Since, really December, when that conjunction happened, it was setting the stage for major expansion and contraction when it comes to how we connect with other people. So I guess the silver lining of the Saturn-Jupiter conjunction, and we've kind of seen this intermittently this whole last year, and it's really come full circle in the new year, is this illusion of separation with other people. And whenever Saturn and Jupiter are conjunct, it's a lot of power, and it's a lot of power that you have to balance the karma and the responsibility of Saturn with the knowledge and the expansion of Jupiter. So in some weird way, it's almost like that conjunction is actually bringing us together, but in an Aquarian way, right? In a humanitarian way, in a way where it's not just about, are we taking care of the people in upper class? It's more, okay, well, how can we see everybody as an equal? And getting to a point where when we start thinking collectively, Aquarius, about how we can solve some of these Saturn issues, like humanitarian issues, environmental issues, issues that pertain to equality, and start thinking of ourselves less as separate and more as a collective, especially energetically, Aquarius, things begin to change. So this is how we kicked off the new year, was coming into this energy and realizing that there is no going back, in a positive sense, I like to think. So now we saw that buildup, of planets that we had in February, which is very unusual. The stellium of planets that we had in Aquarius. And Aquarius, I don't know about you. I mean, February, I don't know about you, but it almost felt like there was a pile up, especially if you had a bunch of fixed planets. So, as far as I'm concerned, February was a moment in time for us really to sit and reflect, because there were certain things happening in the world, but more importantly, also in our own lives, where there was a huge task to become aware of. Did you have that experience? Did I lose you?
I accidentally muted myself because I was typing in the chat. But yeah, totally. Right around that time, I know for sure, there just felt like a motor inside me turned on, like, girl, get going. You have things to do.
Mm-hmm. So what's interesting is also, I like to really look at the degrees and like the decans of each individual sign. And I kind of see like the first 10 degrees is more very much related to the internal and the personal. And then when you get into the 20 degrees of the sign, that's more external and other people. And then when you get into the last 21 to 29 degrees of a sign, that's the whole world. So what's so fascinating to me about what happened in February was, between the Mercury retrograde and then the sun, and we also had Venus, and we had Saturn, and we had Jupiter, and we had Mercury, all of these decans were hit. So in a way, like, February was this snapshot of what we are here to work on a personal level, more so this year, and eventually a collective level within the next 2.5 years due to the Saturn transit. So everybody got a little sneak peek of what their mission was, I guess. So there was definitely, like I called it, like the Aquarian agenda. There was something coming up from the ethers, but also, Mercury was really kind of delivering those punches. So now that the pileup is over and we've moved forward and we're coming into April, really, it's like I keep telling my clients, this is like when the year feels like it's actually going to start. So now that we've had a mix of planets move into Aries and we're in the new astrological new year, we now have an opportunity to progress forward. And I think both just having all these planets and fire signs playing really nicely with the nodes allows us to feel forward motion. And I also see, the action that we're having recently. I mean, if you see this here the last couple of days, the North Node has been connected and conjunct with Mars.
Talk about
that. All these planets in Aries, and then, the Mars North Node connection, to some extent, it has felt a little like rattling. At least for me, it's kind of felt like that. I don't know about you, but I would go back, but I don't want to confuse everybody with the wheel. But, the last couple of days with Mars conjunct the North Node, it's this, okay, we got to get going. We got to move. We got to go somewhere. We're going. And Mars in Gemini is kind of at times a little bit scattered, because it's a double-bodied sign. So there can be a lot of like talking about where we're going and like walking and chewing gum, which can be kind of complicated. I also feel like there's a lot of just moving very quickly and having to put things in order. So signing the contracts, having the phone calls, making the plans, going on the trip. And it's just about paying attention to your natural instinctual drive and really listening to the energies that are coming up that are pushing you forward, especially with these really nice sextiles from all these planets that have been in Aries. And for the last couple of days, Venus has been moving with the sun, which is technically considered to be combust, so that the sun can kind of burn up the Venus in Aries, and it can be super hot and sexy. And it certainly got magnified in this recent full moon that we had in Libra. But I think what it really showed us is where we are in or out of balance recently. And now we have the opportunity to really do a lot of work and emphasis in self-love, Sun Chiron conjunction with Venus, in positive harmonious aspects to Mars and the nodes. So, setting intentions for yourself is so very important right now, or becoming aware of your own individual needs, your own individual goals, your self-love, your day-to-day routines, especially because Aries is what we instinctually do. So, I keep telling clients coming up with a morning routine is important, positive self-affirmations and acts of self-care and self-love, and being able to really set this in motion. So when we come into the new moon, which we're going to be having, I believe it's right around the 11th this month, then we move into a time where we're really acutely aware of the imbalances in relationships and the need to really bring our attention back to ourselves, because when we're the best version of ourselves, then everything else kind of falls into place, and we do divinely align with the right relationships, the right partnerships, the right job, the right moment, the right time. There's a lot of synchronicity happening right now.
Would you say that's because of the position of the nodes? And
yes, to some extent, yes. It's the positions of the nodes. Right now, they're sitting at a 12. So I see that more connected to like a Pisces degree. So we feel things intuitively getting ready to change. We may not start to see them actually begin to materialize until they get closer to a 10, because I see that as a Saturn or a Capricorn degree. So definitely when we're getting up to those degrees, we're gonna see more physical change. But when I see planets shift, or anything really shift from, let's say 12 degrees to 11 degrees, we're going from a Pisces degree, which is I intuitively feel, or I envision, or I dream about, to then when it goes and drops into an 11, and it looks like we're going to be at 11 degrees of the node around April 10th, that's when we see radical change. That's an Aquarius, a Uranian degree. So around April 10th, pretty much through the moon conjunction, and then it'll drop down to 10 degrees. From April 10th, really all the way until about early May is when we're going to see the most change. Now, what's interesting about that is from, the end of April, when we go into Taurus season, when the sun comes into Taurus, everything grounds out and becomes very earthy, right? That's when we start really putting forward the energy and kind of really building. And quite a few planets will come into Taurus and will touch with Uranus. So it's just kind of bouncing off of that 11 degree North Node, which is get ready to rock and roll, kids. There's definitely going to be a lot of change. It's not your stereotypical Taurus season. We've seen this the last couple of years when the sun ingresses into Taurus and it touches with Uranus, that there is this sudden, shocking shift and change in values whether that is financial market fluctuations or, changes in trends with cosmetics and beauty and aesthetics, or we notice that there is a bit of a shift and a need to kind of recenter and rebalance in regards to our relationship with the earth, or our relationship with just our physical body.
Wow.
So I'm predicting that what is coming at the end of April going into May is some of this rock, rattle, and roll, because we'll see the sun move from Taurus April 20th, and it will touch with Uranus, and Mercury and Venus will follow. So some rock and roll in days are definitely going to be pretty much I'm just looking up my side of things here. They look pretty, I'm not going to say hectic, but they definitely look a little iffy from about April 22nd until about May the 3rd or the 4th. And that's because the sun, Venus, Mercury will all move, and they will make connections to Uranus, which is great for intuition. Wonderful for intuition. Wonderful to be working with your crystals and to be eating healthy, or eating organically. Where there may be some rockiness is definitely in relationships. Anytime Venus and Uranus come together, it's electrifying. So that's fun, because there can be love at first sight, and there can be sudden marriages and proposals, and sudden positive financial swings. But it's always sudden. And I think, just with the squares to Saturn.
Yeah, I was just going to say positive. I mean, we're talking Taurus, we're talking, because it's a conjunction, right? Okay, I could see where you're coming from.
Conjunctions are power, and being that the sun is going to be the one making all of these conjunctions, it is going to highlight physical changes. So like, I think market fluctuations, I think economic fluctuations, I think major shifts in beauty trends. I see also, I think what's coming, it may be some physical shifts within the earth. Like we might see some earthquakes or some volcanic eruptions and things like that happening. And what we will experience 3 times this year is the Saturn square Uranus. So we had that in February. And really it's just, not to get like too heady about it, but Saturn wants us to be tried and true to old methods, and to be very much connected to what is the honored way of doing things. And it's kind of old school. Uranus is like, this punk kid with a mohawk that says, well, what if we just like throw a bomb into this situation and see what happens? Like, we need to radically change things. So when you see these two square off, especially because Uranus and Taurus wants us to change our values and our aesthetics and our relationship to material goods, and Saturn in Aquarius wants to see us socially divided, or divided in a sense of class, or it wants us to really focus on the politics. There's definitely conflict. So you can go back and see when we had the Saturn square Uranus first happen, which happened in mid-February. The second square that we are going to be experiencing will be happening, I believe, right around mid-June. I'm just checking things on my side. Give me a second here, but I believe it's mid-June. Yeah. And that will be at 13 degrees. And then finally, we will have one around Christmas. So, really what I encourage people to pay attention to is wherever there was a reckoning in your life in February. I think that was the Enlightenment, the Mercury squares. Now the physical shifts start happening. things start moving very rapidly from April on. And I guess really what that leads me into is then when we come into all of the transits that will be happening at the end of May into June, we're coming into eclipse season
and retrograde season.
What's so cool though, and I'm a big cheerleader for retrograde cycles. Certainly like a Mercury retrograde, which can create some conflicts and some hangups with travel, or conflicts with contracts or signing leases, or just disagreements. Planets that are inner planets like Mercury or Venus or Mars, we feel those retrogrades so intensely. But outer planet retrogrades like Neptune or Uranus or Pluto, that's slow in still changes. But I love retrogrades. I feel like retrogrades are cosmic opportunities to clean out the fridge.
Mm-hmm.
And I also feel like there's so much that happens karmically during a retrograde that oftentimes is overlooked. And I see a lot of other people write about like, oh, watch out for Mercury retrograde and watch out for this. Like, yes, you should be aware, but Mercury is a little bit of a trickster, and he is the messenger god that goes back and forth between the realms and here. And if you can really pay attention to his patterns and his tricksterish ways, you will pick up on those subtle messages from the universe and have the opportunity to kind of course correct things that are coming back up because they either need to be wrapped up and sent back to the kitchen, or they're coming back to you because it's an opportunity. So I really encourage people not to be afraid of retrogrades. I also love that the retrogrades are in air signs this year.
I was just going to ask you to speak on that because we had several years of Mercury retrogrades in water.
Girl, being a Scorpio sun, and oh my goodness, I'm so glad those are over.
Me too. They were a hot mess every time they rolled around.
Well, the last couple of years, there was a lot of retrogrades in Scorpio, and that was dealing with fear. And, you know, now we are moving forward into the air signs. I believe probably the dooziest of all the retrograde Mercuries that we had this year was the one that already passed.
I agree. The Aquarius one.
We had it in Aquarius, and it went back and forth with all those Aquarian planets. And its purpose was to wake us up and say, hey, you know, it's not just about the right now, it's about the 3-year plan and how do we collectively get to where we need to go.
Yeah.
What I love about air signs is that it's intellectual, it's about communication, it's less emotional, less attached, more direct to the point, fact driven, and when in doubt, communicate or breathe, right? So, you know, breathing and meditation or breath work or journaling or, you know, just picking up the phone and having a conversation is going to go such a long way this year. And because we have Saturn and we have Jupiter in Aquarius, and because we have the North Node in Gemini, all of these retrogrades, the one also in Libra coming in the fall, will make aspects to Saturn and the North Node. So it is collectively saying, we must communicate. We must come up with a path forward every 3-4 months when we have these retrogrades. It gives us an opportunity to just go back to the plan and make sure that we're on track.
Right on.
So when in doubt, talk and just breathe, you know, breathing and learning that box breath or any other, you know, even holotropic breathing. Those techniques are going to help ground us into our bodies and make decisions that are less emotionally based and more, I think, instinctually based and intellectually based.
Right on. I love it. Very good. So then that brings us right up into eclipse season, June.
Ooh. Yeah.
And we'll have,
funny. I mean, maybe it's just, you know, I have Sun conjunct Mercury, so I'm always thinking and I'm always future planning and future tripping. And I'm always constantly in a state of being a couple months ahead of time because I'm having to watch these energies because I talk about it a lot to my clients and I'm making content. So we've got eclipses, and the bottom line with eclipses is eclipses are little magical portals in time that doors open and doors close. And when we're in between eclipses, so eclipses come in like, you know, every 6 months ish, and they change signs with the nodal changes. We start feeling the effects of an eclipse about a month before. And depending on the eclipse, it can last for weeks and then it can actually affect us for years. But all you need to know is that once we get into early May, we're already in this energy and people are going to feel it. So the first eclipse that we have is going to be a lunar eclipse on May 26th, and that will be in Sagittarius.
Can you show us that chart? Can we go to that date and time?
Let me see if I can pull that up. Let me see if I have it. I just need to find the time. But it's so funny because that eclipse is 5 degrees of Sagittarius. That's exactly where the moon is.
Right now.
Well, it's going to be there on the 1st.
Oof.
So what we're talking about right now is what we're actually going to be coming into. So that's quite interesting.
Right.
So it looks like it's going to be, sorry, I did not have this ready yet.
That's okay.
Okay.
For those of you who are in the chat, if you're really enjoying this content, you can do two things. Hit that like button. That will help the content get circulated. But the other thing is definitely subscribe to Candace's YouTube channel. I'm going to drop a link to it in the chat there. There will also be a link to her website just below this video so that you, if you want to go ahead and book a reading with her, look, you guys think I book up fast, Candace books up fast, but it is worth the wait. She will get your whole life together in 1 hour. So I highly recommend a reading with her.
So this is roundabout. This isn't exact because I'm just trying to get the minutes, but it's definitely going to be around that day. It looks like it'll be 5:26.
Cool. Yeah.
So, oh no, 5:25. So right about here-ish, May 26th, in the early morning. So yeah, what can we say about, a lunar eclipse? This is a full moon on steroids, kids. That's basically what this is. And full moons are always polarity, opposition, a reckoning, these energies coming together. Fives always deal with drama. But this is an emotional eclipse because it's lunar. So, I kind of see this as like wrapping up chapters. This eclipse also, in my opinion, is relatively more positive, I think, than the other one that we'll talk about in a minute. The big thing that I can see is just we're getting planets that are in close proximity to the North Node. And you will see this build from May 26th until June the 10th. So whenever planets are conjunct North Node, similar to this full moon that we just had, there is emphasis in where we're going collectively. So the sun in the North Node is shining a light on the heart space. It's shining a light on, our egos. It's shining a light on joy, happiness, creativity. In Gemini, it's communication. So it's communicating what we need. The days surrounding this eclipse and even following as we get into early June when the sun touches with the North Node is a really important time just to pay really close attention to what's happening in your life, especially if you know where Gemini is in your chart. It's going to kind of shine a light on, okay, well, this is what we're putting emphasis on. What I'm not crazy about is that Venus and Mercury will be in a square to Neptune. And Mercury is the ruler, of this. I mean, some would say Jupiter, but I feel like because it's going to be Sag, yes, Jupiter is important, but there's a lot of energy here with Gemini. But Jupiter had just shifted, or at the time it will have just shifted into Pisces. So I love Jupiter in Pisces. It's exalted. We're going to see a huge activation and opening in travel, I'm imagining, May, June, July, especially overseas travel or cruise lines, and people are going to start feeling like they can go out a little bit more. But besides that, the moon square Jupiter right here is just big emotions, big feelings. And in the mutable signs, it's feelings are changing, right? We always see that whenever planets are in Gemini. And Mercury will be getting ready to slow down. But anytime I see Venus square Neptune, it can be not clear in terms of love and relationships. There can be a lot of twin flame stuff going on. There can be a lot of, two people, two options, two choices, and confusion. So Mercury square Neptune also is miscommunications. So what I'm imagining is going to kind of set up here is just a lot of polarity and a difference of opinions coming up, a lot of choices coming up, a lot of people who know the calls that they need to make and the decisions that they need to make, but they may be stalling, or they may be confused, or they may not know how to express themselves. So a way to work through this is just to be honest. Be honest with yourself and be honest also in the direction of where you feel like your life could or should be going, right? The other thing that's kind of interesting is I'm looking at Mars coming into an opposition with Pluto, which will happen in June, just shortly after this eclipse. And when we see Mars in opposition to Pluto, it's a power struggle. So I feel like some people will still be making changes with where they're living and where they're working. That's always the axis of Capricorn and Cancer. Or some people may finally get to a point in May, June that's like, oh my gosh, you know, I'm still working from home. Like, do I really still want to be in the city? Do I need to move? So there can be a lot of like work and home changes that are going on as a result of this eclipse. And then we've got the next eclipse, which is going to be June 10th, and that will be in Gemini. So let's look at that one. And that will be at 19 degrees. Oh, pretty bang on, right around here, within a couple of minutes, maybe. And this one is the one that really makes my eyes pop. Like, big time, big time, big time, big time, big time. Here's why. You know, we've got the sun and the moon at a 19. Okay. That is a Libra degree. Marriages, relationships, partnerships, legality, conversations revolving around relationships, the merger of the divine masculine, the divine feminine. This is a eclipse to be reckoned with.
This is a solar
eclipse. What was that?
This is a solar eclipse.
And this is a solar eclipse. Yeah. Which means things are going to physically happen as a result of this eclipse. What's nice, it is a new moon. So it's you have to move quickly to make decisions and make things happen. So here we go. There's emphasis on Mercury. And where is Mercury? Mercury is conjunct the moon. It's retrograde. So this eclipse is putting emphasis on going back to conversations, going back to places, going back to people, going back to contracts, right? And here we also see Mars at that critical 29 degrees of Cancer.
Joy.
Well, you know,
and that's the sign of Mars's fall too.
Yes, it is the sign of Mars's fall. So it's right before Mars goes into Leo. Thankfully, I actually feel like because of where the transits are going after this, you know, it's going to be a little bit smoother sailing. Because we're going to see like Venus and Mars, you know, shortly after a move into Leo, and it'll be warm and fuzzy and romantic. But this is probably the most important lunation, I think, of the whole year. I think that it's important to keep an open mind with this Mercury retrograde, because it would not be conjunct the sun and the moon unless it was really bringing about important conversations that merges the masculine and the feminine, or maybe important conversations and contracts that we need to align with, and really just getting the words out. Now, once again, we still have these squares to Neptune, right? It's not exact, but it's within a couple.
I'm so sick of this Neptune square.
It's about perception. I mean, to be honest with you, I also feel like part of what's going to be happening is, and this is just my personal opinion, I have to say this because I try not to get too political, but Neptune deals with viruses and Gemini deals with the media, okay? And the moon deals with the masses. So part of what I think is going to happen is we are going to see some truths unveiled as a result of this eclipse about what the numbers really are with the pandemic. Are we overreacting? Are we not taking it serious enough? Are the numbers that are coming out real? Has there been an over-dramatization in media to keep people from going out and doing things? Has there been a lot of misconceptions about the vaccines? Are they as effective, or are they more effective than what we thought? So just my opinion and how I've been handling this is like, I'm waiting until post this eclipse, probably the end of June, early July, to see where things really stand before making any decisions in regard to the vaccine in my health personally. Because
Thank you for the pro tip.
There's going to be some stuff that's going to come out, and it could go either way. We don't know because this is kind of fuzzy. What I do like is that we have these trines that are happening. So the Venus trine Jupiter is nice. So that is expanding our beliefs in regards to love and relationships and perhaps even travel. I really like the Sun, Moon, Mercury in a loose trine to Saturn, because even the Mercury retrograde will play with Saturn and it'll help us figure out the path forward. But this eclipse to me screams duality, choices, options, twins, finding our matches, finding the truth, being able to align with the truth, but it's a fork in the road. So many people will find themselves dealing with a lot of duality at this time, saying, do I go left or do I go right? Do I stay here and stay small, or do I take a chance and do I relocate? Do I pick up the phone and call that person and tell them that they're the love of my life, and that, before I go off and get married, I need to have that conversation with them so I know. So if you have any personal planets hovering around 17 to 22 degrees of Gemini or any of the mutable signs, hold on to your pants. I think Gemini placements, it's going to be especially important because it really deals with you. Sagittarians, it's going to be about your relationships and your partnerships. Pisces, it's going to be a lot about your emotions in your home. And for Virgo, it's going to be a lot about your career and going one way or another in regards to your career. Granted, a lot of this depends on your own personal astrology. So I kind of shy away from making big,
declarations.
yeah, because it's really going to depend. But I would say the people who really need to pay attention the most is if it's your birthday, plus or minus one of these days, or if you have any personal planets within these degrees of Gemini, it's a good time to just really be paying attention. And it's a great time to be sharing ideas. And like I said, keeping an open mind with that Mercury retrograde, because even in the days following this, when Mercury goes back, it's going to hit that degree, right? So it's going to hit the 20 and the 19 degrees. So more of it will unfold actually on the 12th and the 13th. And then when Mercury comes back to 19, 20 degrees, then we are going to have yet another review of whatever it is that was happening. And that'll be July 2nd, I think, through the lunation. So July 2nd through July 8th. I mean, it'll take that long for this to shake out, or that long for us to really commit to something, or really figure something out, or work something out, right?
Wowza, wowza, wowza.
Mm-hmm.
I
I'm
mean,
looking
I already
forward
know
to
where all of this sits in my chart. So I'm like, I'm
it.
like, oh Lord, here we go. But I'm also grateful because there have been some decisions that have been pending and in queue in my world that really need to get made so that I can move forward in certain ways. Because I know the houses and the angles that these planets sit on. If you guys are listening and you're like, dang, what does this mean for me personally? Because I definitely see in the chat some questions like, okay, well, what about this in my chart, or what's touching my moon, or that's on my birthday? Get a personal reading with Candace. You will not regret it. I promise you.
I can tell you, just to speak on that though, if it is your birthday and it's a new moon,
Mhm.
off the bat, that means you are setting new intentions, not for just this year, but what you're working on and building that year is all new. And until you have a couple years down the line where you have a full moon on your birthday, it all comes to fruition. And if this happens to be your birthday and it's a full moon, then it's like you're reaping all of the rewards of whatever you've been working on in terms of what area of that chart in your chart that is. And then usually everything kind of comes together. So I don't know if have you ever looked at those birthdays, Kay?
Not exactly. No.
Okay. Well,
No.
like for me, like I had a new moon birthday 4 or 5 years ago. And I remember thinking, oh my gosh, all these things are going to happen. And I put a lot together, and I started a lot that year. And then this last November, when I turned, I'm not even going to tell you, but when I had my birthday, I'm a Scorpio. It was a full moon, and now I am almost 6 months into my full moon year, and my whole life has changed, and it's amazing.
Wow.
And I'm really thankful for a lot of the things that I put in motion a couple years ago. So, if it's your birthday and you have a new moon, new intentions. Your birthday, it's a full moon, big celebrations, big things coming this year, and it's an eclipse. So it doesn't matter if it's your birthday or not. This is one of the more potent times in the astrology all year to set intentions and to align and really walk the walk and talk the talk. And yeah, I'm very excited to see what happens.
Amazing. And that's the eclipse that's on June 10th, the
June
solar
10th.
eclipse, June
It'll be
10th.
June 10th. Yeah.
Beautiful. And so then, so it's the Mercury retrograde that really kind of kicks off all of the other retrogrades, if I have that correct. Because
Yeah.
shortly thereafter, there's like a
This
wave.
retrograde that is going to be happening in Gemini is going to begin on May 29th.
Mm-hmm.
And it's going to complete on June 22nd.
Woohoo.
So we really do need that whole Mercury retrograde phase to bring back all of that Mercury energy and reevaluate something. So some people might get really frustrated because the eclipse brings something up and they're going to want to quickly move through it. But it's like you may actually need until the end of June to really sort all of that out, because there is more than one option.
Amazing. Amazing. Well, this will be entertaining to say the least. And I use that word facetiously.
One thing I'll say is, the people who I think are going to do a little bit better with this energy, obviously, are going to be the air and the fire signs. Yeah. Because, fire feels air and air feels fire. And if you're a Gemini, it's a big time to really kind of align with yourself. And if you're a Libra, it's about your romance and it's about your creativity. And if you're an Aquarius, then it's really kind of shifting into, focusing more on authenticity. And I think it's also focusing on your spiritual connection and tuning into the bigger picture. And then if you're an air sign, if you're a fire sign, all of your personal fire planets will make sextiles to everything that's going on, right? So it's going to fuel it. It's going to be more so the placements of people who have a lot of water in their chart, who are more emotional, and they might have a harder time moving on from the past, or a harder time dealing with the emotions because the energy will move very quickly. Yeah. And then the earth signs that may have a harder time because, they, unlike water signs who can get really sentimental and reminisce, earth signs just have a hard time actually, I think, physically making some of these shifts and making some of these changes. So like I said, it's on a chart by chart basis. Definitely a good time to at least know where Gemini is in your chart. Right
on. Yeah, because that house will be greatly impacted this year for sure. Yeah. Okay, so this is a great time to pause. If you guys have questions generally, because Candace and I, we're going to have her talk about the retrogrades in a moment here. But if you've got questions about general astrology as opposed to your personal chart or this degree or that planet or what's going on in your personal life, if you've got questions generally about the year or the things we've talked about that can apply to everyone, then this is the time to drop those questions in the chat. We'll have a few minutes for Q&A after we talk about the retrogrades, and I'd love to queue up some questions for her. So think through what you might want to know that is applicable to everyone as opposed to just your personal chart. If you want personal readings, again, here's where you can find Candace and have her hook it up. I just placed it in the chat for you. But Candace, let's look at what happens after the Mercury retrograde, because there's a slew of things. We get the Mercury, the Jupiter, and I think Mars doesn't go retrograde this year. Venus doesn't retrograde until December, thank God.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I mean, really the only other retrogrades that we have going on, so we have the Mercury one that's going to end in June. Jupiter will go retrograde from June 20th.
Okay.
So from June 20th, and it will go retrograde until about October 17th. Now, what's interesting about this is that when Jupiter goes retrograde, Jupiter will go back from Pisces and then dip back into Aquarius. So this is a time to watch, especially when all of these planets have been making oppositions leading up to this point, the Jupiter opposition to Venus and Mars and stuff. And then, yeah, the Jupiter retrograde will then end, I believe, on like the 17th or the 18th of November. And at that point, then it will come back into Pisces.
Beauteous.
So, and like I said, love Jupiter in Pisces. It's exalted, super spiritual, super great for traveling, super great for spending time near the water, by water, in meditation, in temples, in spiritual places. So that'll be, I think, kind of fun, especially because, you know, I think Jupiter will make some very harmonious aspects to the nodes next year, which will be
Yay.
quite welcomed because they will be in fixed signs. So at least that Jupiter sextile will kind of smooth over some of the Saturn squares. I know that we will have Neptune going retrograde from June 25th of this year up until December the 1st. And Uranus will go retrograde from August 19th until January 18th, 2022. Like I said, with these retrogrades, the outer planets, it's not that they don't matter. It's just we don't feel these retrogrades as much, right?
Yeah,
So I
they
think
move
the
so
ones
much slower.
that are really going to affect us are going to be the Mercury. So I guess that leads us to the next one. So that'll be September 26th.
Mm-hmm.
This one's in Libra.
Mm.
And this one, I'm personally, I'm looking forward to it because it's going to make some personal aspects for me. But whenever we're dealing with Libra, it's how we learn how to mediate and find the middle ground and learn how to be a team player. That is the archetype of Libra. So when Mercury is going retrograde, the Sun and Mars are also hanging out in Libra. What will this bring up? Well, this is going to bring, first of all, the concluding full moon for the Aries new moon that we're about to have. And I think we're going to see some similar themes to whatever we have been dealing with at the end of March with that full moon that we had in Libra. You know, it was in opposition to Chiron and just showed us a lot of polarity. So we see this come back actually at the end of September when Mercury starts retrograding, when Mars comes into an opposition with Chiron around September 30th. So from September 30th until it comes out of that opposition with the moon, I imagine this is going to be quite a colorful time up until about maybe
Won't it just?
the 10th, 11th, 12th, especially look at these days when Mercury, Mars, and the Sun are all together coming out of the opposition with Chiron. So it's a lot of like go time. People will really decide to jump into that relationship, to finally make that union, to finally make that commitment, to get engaged, to get married. And I imagine it will be quick. So people who are already partnered, there's a lot of reevaluating, like, hey, we talked about this 6 months ago. I need this, you need that. I told you that I was willing to work on it, but hey, now it is or it isn't working.
Mm-hmm.
So you'll see some similar themes of some of the core wounds that we have in terms of other people versus us. And I think really kind of going back to what we spoke about earlier, which was, you know, this full moon that we had in Libra hardcore shined a light on where we can perhaps be part of the problem in partnering. And some of the divine masculine has not been ready to show up for some of these partnerships, or not been ready to heal previous wounds, or not been ready to commit because there's fear. And they've got 6 months to get it together. Women too, it's not just men, but there was an emphasis with the Sun in Aries. And now it's like, if you are kind of in this limbo with partnerships, I encourage a lot of people, especially if you have a lot of placements on the axis of Libra or Aries, to give it to until around mid-October to see if you guys can grow together, if you can finally come together, if you can move through marital issues, or codependency issues or separation issues. And some people may separate and go and see if the grass is greener, only to come back to each other in the fall and then realize that, they took the long road just to come back to what was the best all along. So I see a lot of medicine in the Mercury retrograde in October, and the retrograde will end, let's see, right around the 19th. And then look at this, so beautiful, leading up into the full moon that we're going to have on the 20th, and that's go time. So especially,
I love it.
Our friends over here are squaring Pluto. So it's like things have to change.
Piss or get off the pot.
It'll remind us a little bit of the cardinal squares that we had last year, but cardinal energy just pushes us into movement, into change, into initiating new energies. So I'm actually super looking forward to it. I think that it's going to be worth waiting for.
I was at first really afraid of those cardinal squares. I was like, I don't know.
Those squares move faster. I mean, last year,
but they were fantastic for me.
We had a lot of Saturn Pluto squares last year. So
yeah,
I think this is more brief because the sun and Mars moves quickly.
And there's nothing, Mars isn't retrograde this time.
Yes. Yeah. I don't think we really have a hardcore retrograde until the Venus. That's going to be at the end of this year in Capricorn. And
let's talk about that before we close out. Move to user questions, viewer questions.
Going to start December 19th. And this retrograde is it's so fascinating to me. I'm not fond of Venus retrograde in Capricorn because my natal Venus is in Capricorn. So I'm kind of like,
I'm not fond of Venus retrograde ever.
I'm a Venus ruled chart, so I definitely have a harder time with it. But I mean, everybody does, because Venus is, 40 days of the descent into the underworld and then back and then being reborn. This one is going to be quite colorful. Because it actually will go retrograde conjunct Pluto.
Yeah. Right? What do you make of that?
The need to, Pluto is, transmute or die. It is evolution, the need to uncover the darker side of Venus, and where we are too fixated on Capricorn things like value, power, control, and every time we've seen some of these retrogrades in these degrees, especially when we had the Saturn retrograde in these degrees, is when we saw all kinds of things shutting down, and we saw, government employees being put on leave, and all kinds of things that happen. So I imagine we may see some similarities. I'm not crazy about, I try to be more, I'm honest with my readings, and I try to see the silver lining, but I can't help but feel like with Venus touching Pluto and Capricorn, that will be the end of certain relationships, and the end of certain karmic or ancestral patterns in regards to relationships. We may see a lot of people transition during that time, which is not too abnormal, being that there was an eclipse, earlier in the month of December. But it's going to be a doozy. 26 degrees is usually where something starts to fall apart if it goes retrograde, because it's not solid. It's a Taurus degree. So if a foundation in your life, like your job, like your marriage, like a relationship, like a financial situation, is not solid, then what's going to happen is you're going to start to see it kind of fall apart, especially the 19th, until it moves to conjunct with Mercury. So the 19th through really the 1st is quite intense. And then the retrograde will end, it looks like 129. Actually, I missed a day here. When the sun conjuncts Mercury retrograde, that'll be an important meeting of the heart and realizations of what we need. So special importance on the 8th of January. It will go all the way back down to, I believe, 11 degrees. and then it will go direct January 29th, and then the moon will hit Venus on the 30th. So that'll be some emotional realization. At that point in time, Mercury is also retrograde some of these same degrees
Mhm.
where Venus was and Pluto was. So coming back to some of these conversations and really knocking down some of these power struggles, or knocking and blasting through some of these blocks or some of these barriers. And then Venus will come back with Mercury. So Mercury will touch on these degrees again, February 8th, 9th, and 10th. And then Venus will touch on these degrees within close proximity of Mars. So that's a lot of movement, motivation, power, passion, especially in Capricorn. It's very powerful.
Yeah,
And
that 22nd degree is interesting.
Capricorn degree.
Mhm.
And the power time is going to be February 28th until both of these move back to 0 degrees of Aquarius on March the 6th. So in a way, I kind of feel like the stage was already set for the changes that we wanted to make in our lives. We became acutely aware of that at the end of December. And I think a lot of it is finally we're going to see the bigger picture and see it all really come through right around the beginning of March.
Love it. Love it.
And the Sun
Candace.
Jupiter day too. That's just like so
That's a
magical.
very special day for sure, with that Mars Venus conjunction, Sun Jupiter conjunction at the same time.
Mhm.
We also have a Chiron sextile to Juno, which I personally love.
Well, this will be
Uh,
about wish fulfillment.
yeah.
This is wish fulfillment, especially at a 15. I mean, this is going to be things that you've asked about, things that you've talked about, things that you've written down, and so exciting to see what manifests, because I think a lot of people are going to get exactly what they asked for in a very roundabout way.
Hey. Just remember to use that breathing that we talked about earlier. Well, let's jump into questions. Do you have time for
Sure. Yeah,
questions?
yeah, of course.
Okay, I didn't want to hold you if you were like, okay, I actually have something to do and be someplace to be. Let me scroll back up. Thanks everyone for being here. If you loved the content, please give this video a like. Super appreciate that. If you're new to the channel, welcome. Please subscribe. I have tons of great informational interviews from people who do relationship coaching and light worker coaching, but also other astrologers like Candace who just come in to break it down for us. So it's an exciting time to be a subscriber on the K Moon YouTube channel. Let's see here. Can you touch on, this is from Allison. She wants to know, can you touch on degrees and houses and how to use that knowledge when looking at your chart?
That's a good question. Everybody has their own way of looking at it. I guess part of it is which housing system you work with. I personally like to work with Placidus. And when I'm looking at degrees, I follow the degree theory from another astrologer who I have had readings with, and I've followed some of his work. I think it's Nikola Stanovic. I think that's his last name. He's a Bulgarian astrologer.
Has he been
Um,
on Lada's channel a few
yeah,
times? I've
yeah.
seen him.
Yeah,
Yeah.
he's a great reader. That's my astrologer. And he breaks it down. He's got a couple different books that he's written on degree astrology, but basically I follow 0 for me is always connected to Pluto or a new seed. Otherwise, 1 through 12 is Aries through Pisces, and then 13 through 24 is Aries through Pisces. So I don't know if that makes sense, but like,
It does.
a 5 degree would be a Leo, and a 10 degree would be a Capricorn, or a 22 would be a Capricorn. So I find this very accurate in a sense of predicting, and I find this very accurate also in a sense of looking at the housing cusps, especially if I have to rectify somebody's birth time and they don't know what time they were born. So
Mm.
those degrees can tell me a lot about their appearance and how they look and how they talk based off of how they come up in the chart. So when looking at degrees, it's very important because you'll see a lot of similar patterns, and you start to kind of recognize where certain planets are kind of like harmonizing with each other. Christopher Witecki calls it like a soul harmonic. when you have a couple different planets, both in transit, but also in your natal chart at the same degree. It'll be repetitive patterns that will have a certain energy to them. So I really, I guess that's what you're asking, right? It was just about the degrees of the houses and the
Yeah,
planets themselves.
how to use the knowledge when you're looking at your chart. But this just kind of opens the door to the bigger, more important question, Candace. How do we take classes with you?
Well, I actually am in the process right now of filming a beginner's 101 introductory
Love it.
astrology. So that's probably going to be coming out like within the next 3 months. I'm almost finished filming it. We just got to get ready to edit it and package it. But I'm going to be setting it up in tiers. So I'm going to do the whole first round. And then I think actually to promote selling the packages, I might do something like where I'll do some of the live courses. But my background has been more coming and doing the live courses. So what I'm doing right now is to get ready to start promoting that is every Thursday on my channel. I do a live stream and I'll come on and talk for about an hour about the astro weather and what's going on and just kind of talk to you guys about my method of nerding out with astrology.
I love it. So, those of you who did Star School 101 with me, Star School 101 was exclusively focused on how to better understand yourself and a partner. But many of you wanted to be able to use Star School 101 as a launch pad for becoming a reader. Star School 101 wasn't built for that. This class that Candace is offering will be. So if you know you want to have the opportunity to start reading charts for other people, the groundwork that Candace will lay inside her course will set you up to be able to do so and do so very thoroughly. So
Yeah, it's also just it's just a kind of like a hodgepodge of my method because I've studied with quite a few people. I've been practicing for 14 years. I go in and out of different modalities when it comes to astrology. So I think that for me, it's just a lot of people want to understand how I read. So it's going to be very thorough, but very digestible and kind of like a down and dirty. Okay, these are the formulas that I use to analyze the chart and kind of to be able to better simplify understanding the chart and also kind of touching a little bit on prediction.
love it. All right, let's see. Is a lunar eclipse a good time to make important changes on the personal or professional level? That's from EL.
Well, basically, lunar eclipses are always going to be about emotional shifts, right? And because the moon is moving into the Earth's shadow, one thing you want to be aware of is like not everything is going to be totally shown to you. Okay. And in a way, it's like it's going to take 2 weeks for a lot of that stuff to still kind of shake out. One thing that I think is really great that I always send people to go and take a look at. And like even to this day, I go back and I read. Susan Miller actually puts out a guide of how to cope with eclipses. And she'll talk about, not necessarily so much the degrees, but the difference between a solar and a lunar eclipse, how to be able to deal with some of the news and some of the shifts that are going to be coming. And it can help you, especially if you want to really narrow down what you should or should not be doing specifically based off of where it lands in your chart. But in layman's terms, lunar eclipses are always going to bring about a lot of emotional shifts and a lot of emotional things and things coming to light that are more from the subconscious, and solar eclipses are more outside events and things that are actually physically happening.
Love it. Okay. Very helpful. Thank you. And great question, EL. I appreciated that one. Let's just see where the other questions went. I'm trying to scroll back and make sure that I get them all. Okay. Degrees, EL. Okay, there we go. Chayla says, what are your thoughts on divine unions coming together in 2021?
um
Your laugh was funny.
it's so interesting to me because I feel like so much of what's happened over the last 12 months has literally been a part of the divine plan to get everybody on track.
Agreed.
With their purpose, whether that's their career, their family, their heart's desires, their, divine partnerships, the people who they're meant to be with. Like And I think it's safe to say many of us have been totally just like blindsided by some of the things that have happened
Yeah.
on a personal level, right? Because the macro is the micro. Yes, I feel, because the North Node in Gemini is about options, path, choices, duality, our twin and divine union, that a lot of what is happening is there is a hard realignment, that we are being given all of the opportunities and all of the exit strategies in our current life standings to be able to align with those people. My warning is that if you do not embrace change and embrace a possible second option, or be open to the narrative of your life changing and shifting with the support of Saturn and Jupiter for something that ultimately is better, this Venus retrograde in Capricorn is going to be an absolute nightmare.
Yeah.
So paying attention to these second paths that present themselves in June and July and August, and really opening your heart to a new narrative that may not necessarily would be what you thought you wanted, or maybe what you thought you needed, or what you thought you liked, but it actually quite literally is what you need. It is a part of your soul growth.
It's interesting because this definitely came up during the channeled messages for twin souls this year in the first segment, for those who have been in prolonged periods of separation with a twin who has both said and behaviorally demonstrated it's not happening between us in this lifetime because I have commitments in other places.
Mm-hmm.
The channeled message had a lot to do with there is a much bigger union window showing up, in particular in 2023, but that this year in particular, you may find that you get rerouted on a path toward that union window, and union energy will show up for you and come for you as long as you're willing to allow it to. But that would mean that there's a transition as you get on that new track with
Oh, of
it, because
course.
the
Yeah.
union energy will come, whether it's through the face and face, and an energy, or an energy, with a different face and body. We are all being routed in that direction. So
there was definitely a hard reset that happened last year on the twin flame relationship levels because of the Mars retrograde, because of the Venus retrograde in Gemini.
Yeah.
And there was just a lot going on where many people were waking up and realizing something wasn't working, and maybe there was another option, or maybe they jumped to something else and it was temporary. And to kind of build off of what you said, well, this year is so important for just opening us up to the next path. That doesn't always mean that somebody else shows up and we skip from this relationship to the next relationship. It may mean that this is the year that you make that segue and you become aware and you start the work so you can be open to receiving what you're going to receive in 2023. Because in 2023, when the North Node is meeting with Uranus and Taurus, and also, Jupiter is meeting with Chiron in Aries, and then it's going to touch on the North Node, there is huge shifts happening in 2023 and 2024, which is going to be way down the line. But my point is that if you are somebody who experienced a lot of back and forth in a relationship or in a twin relationship or what have you last year, that was the universe giving you this opportunity to get out, so you can be open to receiving what we're here to receive actually this year.
Yeah. Which from a frequency standpoint, there's been so many people I've read for who are like, I've done all this work and my twin is still doing the same thing they've always been doing. Nothing's changed on their end. And it's been years. And I'm like, okay, this is the year where you get to open up to the universe providing an alternative for you. Because it'll be at that frequency or something higher, but you have to be willing to receive. And in order to receive with one hand, you also have to open that hand and be willing to let go, like place this on the altar for transformation and fully surrender.
Well, and something else I'll just say that not a lot of people like to hear this, but oftentimes, like, if that person is your person, if that is your beloved matched soul, then it doesn't really matter what's going on. Like, sometimes the third dimension is the last to catch up. So at least when I think about things on a twin flame level, there's a lot of connection and dreams and intuition and synchronicities. And it is the last thing to show up is that physical union. If that person is meant for you, sometimes the reason why it's not working out right now is you may need to go and get the lessons that you need to get from other people or from other life situations. And you need to work that stuff out. And you might think that you're ready, or you might think they should be ready, when in reality, you both might have work to do on other levels before you can actually physically come back together. Because we've seen what happens when we try to align with people when it's maybe the right person, but not the right time. And oftentimes there's a lot of pushback and there's friction. And then inevitably we find ourselves having that space. So I try to encourage clients to look at this in a different way, where if that really is yours, like what really truly does belong to you in that sense, cannot be taken away from you.
Facts.
And it's hard to accept that or acknowledge that, but being present with your own lessons and healing, even if sometimes that means you get it from other people in the meantime, if it's meant to be, it will come back like a boomerang.
Yeah. And that's one thing I emphasize a lot in my readings is that, union windows open and close, they come and go. The universe is cyclic and there's always opportunities.
Mm-hmm.
There isn't just a singular option. There are multiple options there, but much of how we get to and through, the destination we want to be at has a lot to do with what we're willing to do now in order to have what we want later. And sometimes that does require letting go now so we can have what we want later, as opposed to gripping and holding on. So thank you for that, Candace. I mean, now you guys hear the wisdom she's dropping here, correct? Like, this is why I read with Candace. She is amazing. So I want to just pause here because we're about 15 into Q&A. Do you want to take more questions?
Sure, yeah, I can take some more questions.
Amazing. So Stephanie Grace says, can you explain a Jupiter return, please?
Ooh, so you want to look at the sign and the placement of your Jupiter return. Your Jupiter return happens every 12 years. And Jupiter is about good luck, knowledge, wisdom, expansion. Really, when I look at a chart, the two things that most people crave is their Jupiter or their Venus. So you can't go wrong with Jupiter, other than Jupiter can just make everything bigger. So if you've got some Jupiter conjunctions, it's going to put a great deal of emphasis on that planet. If you have like a stellium of planets in that sign, it's going to be like lit up kind of like a pinball machine. It's just going to be like ding, 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 ding. All these things are going to hit at one time. But Jupiter coming back is similar to having your solar return or your Venus return. It's the rebirth of your Jupiter. So you want to know, like I said, the house and the sign, but all in all, really what it's going to do is it's just going to bring you more abundance and more knowledge, more good luck.
Hey, I love it. Opens up a big, bright new chapter. Love it. LM asks about birth chart rectification. So LM, that's the word for what you're asking here in the chat, because they're not sure of birth time.
Mm-hmm.
It sounds like birth chart rectification. If you don't know your birth time, you can do a chart rectification. That's something that you offer. Is that correct?
Yes, I do that. I do my best to try to encourage clients to talk to moms, brothers, sisters, grandmas, parents to get the most accurate time, because we can narrow it down from there. If not, they can also go and contact, at least in the United States, their county records clerk, and usually you can get a copy, or you can also get it through online, through other sources. There's other companies that will get you that information. If you cannot do that, usually what I do is I will set aside an extra half an hour to sit and ask clients a couple questions and about their life. It's just basic questions that they give me answers to, so I can narrow down what their ascendant may be. And then I also will do like a Skype or a live call with them, because I want to see what they look like, because I can take a look at their features and their profile to size up and kind of figure out what degree their rising sign might be.
Wow, that's sexy. I'm going to have to learn about how to do that, because I don't know how to do birth chart rectifications.
You become super perceptive of people. And that's also where the degree astrology comes in very, very handy.
Amazing. I love it. Okay, so next astrological question. We're taking astro questions here. Amanda, that's more of a personal question. We're looking at astro questions. Okay, Chayla, we answered that one. And let's just see. Reverse nodal or node inverse nodal returns.
Ooh.
Can you talk about what those are, what people
Yeah.
might experience, all of that?
So your nodes in astrology are symbolic of where your soul is coming from and where your soul is going. So the South Node can relate to previous patterns, habits, putting an emphasis depending on the sign and the house on what you have learned in a past life that you carry over into this lifetime. It can also be where we get too comfortable. So I tell people don't rely too much on your South Node. Your North Node is your destiny or your Dharma. So it's what you are agreeing to come into this life to work on or to learn. Oftentimes it's kind of scary. So the nodes are fixated obviously in the birth chart, but the nodes of the moon are they're calculated points in the sky. They are not planets, and they are always moving, and they change every 18 months or so. So when you have a reverse nodal return, this means that the transiting south node is conjunct your natal north node, and the transiting north node is conjunct your natal south node. This happens about every 18 to 19 years. So every 9 years, you'll have a nodal return. It'll either be exact, which I see as a hard realignment with your destiny. When it's a reverse nodal return, it's literally the past and the future meet in the present. So what I like about it is that you get all the yummy karma of the north node on your south node. So you reap all of the rewards from your past life karma, or perhaps you bring in all of the talents that come from your past life and you can really utilize them at that time to help you. What's more challenging is that the south node is on your natal north node, and if you get too fixated on your natal south node, it can be more challenging or complicated, or it can actually hinder you from being able to actively move into the future. Oftentimes I see this as a period of time for about a month or two where just a lot of people from the past come back and a lot of things from the past come back, and you have to decide if you want to clear that out and move forward, or if you want to carry it into the next 9 years.
Spectacular time, those inverse nodal returns. I will say the year that I had my inverse nodal return was also the year I taught myself astrology. I listened to every video Candace put out that year. And I also remember reading a lot on the internet, but it came to me as if it had already come from a past life, as if it was information I was remembering, as opposed to information that I was learning for the first time. Because it was literally like I would read everything on the first page of Google about, Saturn through the houses. And it was like, boom, it was stuck in my brain. I only had to see it 1 or 2 times. And it was like, oh, yeah, I remember that. So one
That's
of the
cool.
things I've seen about that inverse nodal return is there can be a retrieval of something from a past life that is looking for a resolution or expression in this life.
I love that. I mean, for me, I think about the ones that I've had. I mean, it's kind of hard because I had a hodgepodge of transits all at one time. When I had my reverse nodal return in 2018, I also had my Saturn's return and I had Pluto square my moon. So it was like,
you were not playing around.
For me, it was like, where's it coming from? But I'm feeling a little bit of it now because I have my North Node in Aquarius, and there's a bunch of planets hovering around my North Node right now. So I feel this strong push towards my North Node, which is bringing up all my South Node stuff. So that can do it too. When you have a transiting planet on your North Node, it's great with the conjunction to your North Node, but you still grapple with the opposition to your South Node. So it can feel similar.
Right on. Right on. Oh, man. Juicy times. All right. Richard Tomlinson asks, what can we expect in April of this year regarding behaviors in people around us and behaviors in the collective?
That's a good question.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I mean, with the sun moving with Venus for the first 5 or 6 days of the month, expect that to be a sexy time. Especially in Aries. I always laugh. This is like when Venus puts on like the thigh-high leather boots.
I could use a sexy time.
It's fun. It's passionate,
Yes, please, and
especially
thank you.
with the sextiles that you have, pun intended, from Mars and Venus.
And sextiles literally mean 60 degrees, people. They don't actually mean having sexy times.
But it's nice. I think it may be quite pleasant, at least up until we start seeing planets coming into a square with Pluto, which will be the second half of April. But until then, Mars is still making trines to Jupiter. So this is lots of active energy, lots of chatty, communicative energy, lots of socializing. I mean, we are going to start to feel the world open up again. Where I think things start to get a little bit uncomfortable, we'll start with coming into the lunation of the new moon in Aries. When the moon touches with Pluto, obviously it's always an uncomfortable time and there's some kind of a shift, but it's coming into the darker period right before we have the new moon in Aries. Lots of like focus on self and physical activity and selfishness and focusing on our needs will be happening, maybe the 10th, really until the moon leaves Mars. So the 10th through the 18th is just physical activity, getting outside, working up a sweat, getting some sun in, being aware of our fitness, being aware of self needs, focusing on the self. And it's so important because this is a reoccurring theme all year, that it's less about other people, it's more about us. And when we are all making a conscious effort to do the self work, that will start to vibrate and manifest externally within the collective. Where I think things get, like I said, uncomfortable is definitely going to be when Mars hits 29 degrees around the 22nd. And then all of these planets like Mercury and Venus, and then also the sun, will be conjunct Uranus. So the bumps and the rattles and the rolls will be beginning right around the 21st. And it will really rattle with lots of information and unexpected changes with finances, values, relationships, the 25th. And then I think collectively it'll be building until it hits us on a very personal, individual level when the sun touches with Uranus on the 30th. Shocks and surprises.
Joy.
So, this will be amplified also because all of these planets will be making squares to Saturn. So we'll be going back to things that you talked about or spoke about, or things that you said that you really wanted when Mercury and Jupiter were in Aquarius. Many people were not aware that they were subconsciously asking or manifesting things in February, saying, I'm going to do this in 2021. Not really physically thinking they would have to follow that up. But, joke's on you guys, the end of April going into May, it's like, it's not even about, are you going to put it into action? It's now things are just going to start happening. They're going to start manifesting on the physical realm.
Right on. I love it. This is great. That was a great question, Richard. Thank you. And then for our final question of the evening, EL asks, is it true that a South Node aspect in Sinistry indicates a karmic partner?
I'm trying to decide if I want to give you my personal opinion or my professional opinion.
And specifically, can you, before you even do this, can you define for us how you define a karmic partner?
My definition of a karmic partnership is somebody who comes in from a past life, who we have a soul agreement or a soul contract to fulfill some type of lesson. It is not necessarily we have to be together, we have to stay together, we have to get together, we have to meet each other halfway. I always refer my clients to the book, The Little Soul in the Sun. I don't know if you've heard of that one, but it's like a child's book, but it explains on a soul level why sometimes we have the karmic relationships that we have and the karma that we have. And, the soul is explained basically that, we have these karmic contracts, and sometimes we come in before we incarnate knowing that we are going to be the hero or we are going to be the villain. I don't always like to put it like that. I guess we could, for your audience, it could be the runner and the chaser. And we know that some people love us so much, and there is such a strong karmic tie or a balance that we know going into this lifetime that we are going to do this tango, and it may be with our mother, it may be with our husband, it may be with our girlfriend, it might be with our best friend, that we are going to initiate this karmic lesson. And even though sometimes it's very challenging, it's not always butterflies and rainbows, that they love us so much and they're so committed to us on a soul level and to that karmic contract that they are willing to come in sometimes and help teach us the more challenging lessons, right? So it's not always as cookie cutter as people make it out to be. Building off of that with the South Node, because the South Node does talk very explicitly about where we've been, what we've done, what's familiar, what is comfortable, what we love, what we know. When you have a hard contact, like a conjunction to a South Node, that, in my opinion, can be very karmic, right? Squares to the nodes, I see more as, at least in Sinistry, as helping us move out of past collective stuff and into the new, really ushering us into our North Node because it gets us out of our South Node. But when I see a planet Sinistry-wise on the South Node, it is not just familiar in a sense of that sign, right? Because some people who, for example, I'll use my chart, my South Node's in Leo. I find myself time and time again have gravitated around Leo energies. And I've had lots of Leo placement friends and lots of people who have had Mars or Venus on my South Node. And what I've realized is that that is comfortable. It feels good. It's like a moth to a flame, but I've gotten to a point where it's like, oh, I've been there, done that. Like now I'll look at it and go, okay, I'm just aware and I'm conscious of the fact that I'm drawn to it. And that doesn't mean that it's negative or positive. It's just neutral. But it's a reminder that, it can be opening up the karmic Pandora box. Trines to the South Node are not necessarily bad. It's more familiar, but I would say conjunctions are definitely, in my mind, a big marker of something that may deal with the past. Saturn aspects in Sinistry also may somehow deal with the past. Pluto aspects are more about transformative. It's more neutral. But yeah, for me, South Node conjunctions are big indications, especially if there's conjunctions and trines. Like if you have a planet conjunct the South Node and then trine your Saturn, or maybe trine your Venus, that can definitely feel like, oh, we've been here before.
Big stuff. And those are Sinistry contacts we're talking about specifically.
Yeah, Sinistry contacts. Yeah. And, you always want to look at the big ones, Venus and Mars and the moon and the sun. But I have very different perspectives on, Sinistry, I think, than other people. I've seen lots of couples who have planets where they have South Node contacts and North Node contacts, which I love. I think that's extra romantic, right? I loved you so much that I came back in this lifetime, and we have stuff to do in this lifetime so we can keep moving forward together.
Right
so
on.
Not all South Node contacts are created equal. If it's a more pleasant planet like Venus or Jupiter or even the moon, it can feel very positive. But harder contacts like Pluto on the South Node, Saturn on the South Node, Mars on the South Node, or if you're really lucky, you get Mars and Venus on the South Node and you can make love and war.
Oh, too funny. Awesome. Candace, you've been a real treat and a real pleasure and a massive teacher. You've been a huge part of my journey, and it's just such an honor and a pleasure to continue to share you here on my channel. If you're new to the channel and this is your first time hanging out with me, or maybe your second time and you haven't subscribed yet, subscribe. You'll get lots of fun astro updates, not just for the Lightworker Collective, but also for the Twin Soul Collective every new and full moon. And if this is your first introduction to Candace Marie of Beyond the Veil Astrology, you can find the link to subscribe to her channel both in the chat and just below, as well as the link to book a reading for her there as well. References that we've mentioned on this live broadcast will also be in the description box below. Candace, thanks so much for being here. It was a real treat.
Thank you so much. I appreciate you sharing time and interweb space with me. And thanks to everybody who tuned in and was participating in the chat. It was a good time.
Yeah, great questions tonight. And then once Candace's astrology school goes live, I will also have her back so that she can kind of talk to us about enrolling and give us like a little preview of what to expect for those of you who are astro nerds like me and want and just love learning astrology information. We'll probably be in class together.